Okay, this is my special occasion speech. Denise Pfeiffer, here's the audience. As you may have seen, I also have some items on the table for my speech. While I give my speech, the items on the table are things that I have received from my grandmother and things that I have to remember her. First of all, my speech is on my Grandma Meyer. I'd like to tell you about a very special person who was part of my life and is now still is. Her name was Magdalena Meyer, my grandma. This could be one of the hardest speeches I've ever had to give because this week was also her birthday. She passed away this past spring on May 26th at the age of 94. She was born on November 25th, 1914 in Emmons County to my great-grandparents John and Sophia Crum. She had 3 brothers, 5 sisters, and she held a big part in their lives and their upbringing. She attended country school and loved to learn. When she had to quit school to help take care of her younger siblings, my grandma would study out of their books when they went all into bed. It was important to her that she continue learning even though she wasn't able to go to school. She married my grandpa Ben in Hague, North Dakota on September 28, 1937. My grandma was a very busy woman. She gave me 9 uncles and 14 aunts. But my oldest uncle Benny died when my mother was only a few months old, so I never got a chance to meet him. All of these uncles and aunts led to about 34 cousins, which turned out about 36 great-grandchildren for my grandma. My grandparents were farmers who lived right down the gravel road when I was very young. Fortunately, when my parents moved to town, my grandparents also did live in town. They never lived more than a few blocks away from me, and I graced them with my presence all the time. Well, maybe it wasn't always such a graceful presence, but I was there. She cherished her family and loved it when they came to visit. She especially loved it when they came to visit on Sundays so she could feed them her best Sunday soup known to mankind. I'm actually surprised that she even had enough homemade noodles to make soup for the whole family, considering that my sister and Dawn and I ate most of them off of her bed, where she would let them to dry. We would sneak in and eat them, and Grandma would catch us. From all the time I spent at her house, I learned that my grandma was a very gifted and creative in many areas. I like to think that me being at her house quite a bit helped the creativity rub off on me. Grandma was an unbelievable seamstress. She could make anything without even a simple pattern to follow. I have no idea how many patches and seams I watched her fix on Saturday afternoons so that her boys could pick them up Sunday after church. She would make buns the smell of my head. I remember the smell on Sundays and Saturdays when I used to be over there. I don't think I've ever had a bun as delicious as my grandma's, not to mention as delicious as her honey and molasses cookies were to me also. I was lucky enough to get her recipes when I got older and use them whenever I get a chance. But they still don't compare to Grandma's no matter how hard I try. She just had the touch. I think the biggest thing that my grandma ever taught her family and friends was how to love and appreciate God and what He has given to them. She held her religion in the utmost importance and taught her family to do the same. I think this is why my family has been spared from dealing many hardships that face most families now. My grandma was a very important person in my life, and I will always remember her and pass her memory to my future generations. When she passed, I wrote a poem about her to help me deal with the grief and remember her in the future. In closing, I'd like to share this poem with you. The greatest woman I've ever known has gone to her heavenly home. She has left behind her family, but we are all far from alone. She has given us all each other to comfort and to love. We know she's watching closely from her home now up above. She taught us all to love and speak only what is kind. If there was ever something bothering us, I think she could read our minds. She always told us not to worry about anything at all. She said, just pray to the Lord and He would answer your call. She stitched more blankets and patches than I could ever keep track. When it came to gardening and baking, she had such a knack. The memories she left us with will always make us smile. The grief we have will surely pass in a while. But the feel of her soft touch when we needed a hand to hold will always be imprinted in our hearts for decades to behold. So we shed a tear if we need and to think of her up above, but we'll never forget my grandma's genuine and endless love. Happy birthday, Grandma.